How much do you trust your neighbors? In this story, I'll tell you what disasters struck a family who moved in and trusted the wrong person. Grab your tea, sit back, and make sure you watch until the very end. Walter Johnson was carrying boxes one by one. The edges of the cardboard stacks in the garage clashed as his eyes caught the flickering sunlight spilling through the windows. The house was empty, yet its silence wasn't comforting. It felt more like anticipation, the beginning of something new. Sarah chuckled softly, holding a potted plant in her hands. Ethan was fiddling with some wires from an old video game console in a corner. Lily, clutching a stuffed bear, was exploring her new room with innocent curiosity. This was the quiet state they had carefully chosen after long research. Walter, used to frequent business trips, wanted a peaceful life with his family together. Sarah envisioned a life away from the city's noise, a safe place for the children to grow. The new house felt like a second chance. As they were finishing up the move, a familiar voice came from the garden gate. A middle-aged woman holding a basket smiled warmly. "Hello, are you the new neighbors?" she asked, her voice genuine. "Yes, Walter Johnson," replied Walter. "We're a bit tired, but happy to be here. I'm Schuyler Miller. I live next door. Welcome. I brought some cookies. Thought you might like a little treat. I can even help you with the unpacking." Schuyler immediately jumped in to help with the boxes. Her quick movements and practical skills eased their workload. Sarah was almost moved to tears by Schuyler's warmth. Ethan, noticing her friendly smile, exclaimed, "Mom, new friend!" Lily clung to Schuyler, who gently embraced her. From that day on, Schuyler often came by to help, arranging kitchen cabinets, small repairs, even showing Walter how the garden irrigation system worked. Life in the small town moved slowly, and Schuyler's presence gave the family a sense of security. Their new neighborhood friendship blossomed faster than they expected. A week later, the family invited Schuyler over for tea. The evening lights were dimmed, the house filled with the comforting aroma of baked treats. As Sarah talked about dinner, Schuyler joked and played with the children, while Walter shared stories about old neighborhoods. The conversation deepened as they sipped their 7th cup of tea. "We're actually planning a trip to Florida next week," said Sarah. "About a week. Let the kids see the beach and I can relax a bit." "That's wonderful," Schuyler replied, her eyes gleaming with apparent joy. "Could you collect the mail and water the plants while we're gone?" Sarah added, a hint of worry in her voice. Walter hesitated slightly when the topic of keys came up, but seeing Sarah's trust in her eyes, he nodded. Schuyler thanked them warmly. "Don't worry, everything will be fine," she said, taking the key gently. At that moment, giving the key seemed like a normal neighborhood gesture, a small act of trust. Walter glanced at Sarah. "Are we sure?" he asked quietly. "I'm sure. Schuyler seems genuinely helpful," she replied. Walter and Sarah watched Schuyler walk back to her own house, a small wave of relief washing over them. Yet, a tiny unease lingered in the corners of their minds, something too subtle to name, but enough to make them glance back at the key in Sarah's hand. Over the next few days before their trip, Schuyler visited the house under various pretenses. She checked the mail, watered plants, and helped rearrange kitchen items. Her presence seemed natural, even helpful, but she lingered longer than expected. When Walter was at work and Sarah tended to the children, Schuyler would quietly move through the house, casually opening drawers or examining shelves. Nothing appeared out of place, yet each movement was precise, as if she were memorizing every detail. Sarah noticed small things, a misplaced pen, a slightly shifted picture frame, and dismissed them at first. The kids probably moved it, she thought. Walter, busy with unpacking, hardly paid attention. Trust had wrapped itself around them like a comfortable blanket, blinding them to the growing shadow. One evening, Schuyler invited herself for tea, and the children were thrilled to have her around. Lily clung to her as usual while Ethan showed her a new toy he had just received. Schuyler's eyes subtly swept the room as she sipped her tea, noting where valuable items were kept, which cabinets contained documents, and which rooms the children spent the most time in. Her smile never faltered. She was the perfect picture of friendliness. That night, after Schuyler left, Sarah couldn't shake a strange feeling. She checked the locks on the doors again, almost compulsively, and whispered to Walter, "Do you think we're being too trusting?" Walter shook his head. "Schuyler seems genuinely helpful," he replied, echoing the very words he had said when handing over the key. But even as he said it, a small knot of doubt tightened in his stomach. Days passed quickly. Schuyler continued to help, always polite, always smiling. The family packed for Florida, thinking of beaches, sandcastles, and sunsets, unaware that Schuyler's quiet observations were preparing her for a carefully planned act. She had learned the layout, memorized the placement of valuables, and understood the family's routines. Each small act of kindness had been a thread, tying their trust to her scheme without their knowledge. By the day of their departure, the house felt normal, almost too normal. Walter double-checked suitcases while Sarah packed snacks for the kids. Ethan chattered excitedly about the beach, and Lily clutched her favorite stuffed bear. Outside, Schuyler waved goodbye, the perfect neighbor once again. But behind her friendly smile, her mind traced the map of the house, planning each step she would take once the family was gone. The flight to Florida brought them into a sky painted with deep blues. The scent of the sea filled their lungs. Ethan ran toward the sand. Lily collected seashells. Walter held Sarah's hand and for a moment felt all exhaustion vanish. The holiday exceeded their expectations. Photos were taken, barbecues enjoyed, and stories told by the campfire at night. Meanwhile, back home, Schuyler performed her duties while observing the house. Initially, her visits seemed harmless, collecting mail, watering the plants, but she began noting details no one else noticed. The hidden jewelry box in the living room, a document on Walter's desk. These notes were the map of her plan. Schuyler first spent evenings sitting in the garden, leaving the door slightly open while tending the plants. She was perfectly normal from the outside, yet inside she explored bedrooms, the living room, and even the master bedroom, her eyes memorizing every detail. She preferred exploiting human vulnerability rather than breaking locks. By the third day of their trip, Schuyler finalized her plan. She would first take a small sum, then the most valuable jewelry. If necessary, she'd sell items without anyone discovering. The trust they placed in her became her opportunity. Back in Florida, Walter texted Sarah, "Everything okay?" Sarah replied with a photo of Lily's massive sandcastle. Walter sent a few heart emojis. They enjoyed the vacation blissfully, unaware of the brewing storm. On the last night before returning, Skylar executed her plan. She entered the house calmly and systematically, taking money, jewelry, and electronics. By morning, everything appeared untouched to anyone glancing superficially. Returning home, the family first noticed subtle signs. An empty envelope on Walter's desk, missing jewelry, Ethan's missing game console, Lily's favorite necklace gone. Shock quickly turned to suspicion. Police were called. Skylar, when approached, initially feigned confusion. "Are you sure?" she asked, her friendly facade intact. Evidence, however, pointed directly at her. A background check revealed previous similar incidents in other towns. Security footage placed her around the house on the vacation days. Items sold at local shops matched their missing valuables. The family faced a harsh reality. Even a seemingly perfect neighbor could betray you. Their trust had been exploited, leaving emotional scars alongside the material loss. Sarah later wrote in her journal, "Neighborhood trust is precious, but you must recognize the boundaries. We made mistakes. First, we must safeguard our children's security, then extend trust carefully." Walter grappled with guilt and anger, haunted by Skylar's smile that had masked her true intentions. In the end, they rebuilt their home, repaired the gaps in their security, and learned to balance trust with caution. As Sarah stood by the window one evening, gazing at Skylar's house, she whispered, "Even your neighbor, never hand over your keys. Not everyone is as innocent as they appear. Better not." Walter stood behind her, placing a hand on her shoulder. Together, they repeated the mantra, a lesson learned the hardest way.